So can you talk to us a little bit about what the process is from going to stereo mix into an Atmos mix? What kind of things are you thinking about, and what are some of like the pitfalls or some of the things that maybe you took some time to learn and figure out about the process?
For me, I feel like it was an easy transition. Besides learning all the lecture stuff and like reading the manual and the configuration and all of that. Besides that, the transition from mixing from stereo to Atmos was super easy for me. When I mix in stereo, I'm always thinking, what instrument, what can I do in order for this to sound already immersive in stereo and already big and grand. I use a lot of panning already.
Yeah.
Sound toys. I use a lot of mid-side EQing. So in order to make room for the vocals, I always dug things in order for things to shoot out. So my mindset was already there. And when it got into Atmos, I was like, finally, now I have the tools to really use this and move things around the room. And also like seeing it happen in the render, it's just like, it's really cool. It's like, for me, it's a video game too. So it's I'm always like, how crazy can I get?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm self-taught in music, so I like learned without actual rules. And
sometimes that's better though, because
no, 100%. It's just, you just gave me a bunch of new tools to move things around a room. So my initial experience was, I want to move every sound. I want to automate every sound. I want to like create this whole thing, and then learning, what your artist might be looking for versus me just having fun in the studio and being like, oh, I could move this because I can. And so it's fun, And so learning that transition where it was like, I don't want to stray too far to turn the artist off of the mix, but I want to still create an immersive environment for them to where when they hear it, it's like they heard their song for the first time again,
Yeah. So like, speaking of artists, can you talk about what the artist reaction has been, or are there things they like? Are there things that they're specifically asking for or looking for in an Atmos mix?
The artists I usually work with at the last year, they've never heard Atmos before, so they had no idea what it was. Most of the time it was the label were like, hey, we're gonna do this in Atmos, and they're just like, okay, we'll do it, So I had the ability to kind of sell that to them in a sense. My goal was that once I was done with the mix, I would invite them in the studio, and I did that about 3 times. I invited Umi in the studio, I invited Rhapsody in the studio, and I was like, let's have a playback session. And I was like, let's get some popcorn, let's like make it very intimate. And their reaction was like, wow, this is so cool. And even to the sense where they were like, damn, they kept hearing their songs and as they went down sequence, and they were like, oh man, I wish I can go back and change this or add more effects, or just the way of their mind of like producing the song kind of flipped and and they thought, next time around I know what to do. And when I start tracking, when I start working with a producer, because the elements in a song, the more you have, the better the Atmos mix is gonna sound.
For sure.
Yeah, and also, in sending stems, like, every engineer is different. So you might get, grouped stems for something, and having the control over individual sounds, especially in Atmos, kind of helps do that. But I think when I first started doing Atmos mixes, I was under the assumption that like artists were just like in Atmos studios waiting to hear the mix when it gets sent back, Then you realize like artists are, they're busy people. They got a lot going on, especially nowadays where you can content create, all of this stuff. And so a lot of the time I started to realize they're listening to, the binaural wave or the MP4, whatever's convenient for them and wherever they're at in their life. And so, like she said, inviting artists to the studio and being able to hear the full effect of it, I think is very important, because otherwise, like they're so busy, they're not like reading up on Atmos to be like, what is this going to be? What am I expecting? This and that, right? So they're hoping to hear their mix that they heard, that they approved, that they, all of that. And so to be able to have somebody come to a room and listen to the things moving around in the room is the real, like the hook. It's the catch. It's like,
because I remember the first time I heard Atmos in a room, and I was like, it was like listening to music for the first time. It was like, bringing in another color I hadn't learned yet.
Yeah.
Into the room, and I thought that was really exciting because I was a bit on the fence about the whole format. Before that, but
and it's so brand new to me to build relationships with the label, with an artist. I always invite like either an engineer or an A&R. I'm like, hey, you're doing anything today? You want to pull up to the studio? I'm working on some stuff. Pull up. So they pull up, they see what I'm doing. They've never heard of Atmos, and they're just like, oh, this is cool. You know what I mean? Now I know who to hit up for any mixing. Also artists, like, they've never heard Atmos, so I'll not only play the mix we've been working on, but other mixes, and they're like, oh, can we play the Rihanna, blah, 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 and I'm like, yeah, let's play it. And they're like, oh, okay, so it's cool to, like, show them, like, something new, something advanced in the music world now.
Yeah, and it's another way for people to understand and connect to their music. Now that's got like a spatial quality to it. It's like, if you want to go dance in the club, suddenly you can have that sensation because what Atmos allows you to do. You spoke briefly about binaural. So can you talk about how you are making sure that those mixes translate to, consumer headphones and things like that? And if you don't have like a wonderful Atmos room to be listening in, what's kind of like that process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I move around a lot as well, just in stereo mixing or whatever I have to do. So there are a lot of times where I'm, starting a mix just in headphones, and I'll later go check it in a room just to make sure everything's there. But, it's a convenience thing. The headphone experience is a little bit different, but I think you start to learn, I'll like correlate like, certain height starting points or placements and kind of create like that as a starting point, which allowed me to kind of learn the headphone space a little bit more. So now, like, if I need to do something in headphones because I'm on the road, I'm more comfortable, more confident in those decisions and how they're going to translate into an actual room. I will say that I work a lot in, hip hop, R&B, things like that. So it's never really a good response if your kick or your bass are not like they were in the stereo.
Yeah.
But it also works to your advantage because having something centered and right there creates, like, when you spread something, that creates the contrast. So you actually feel the width or the movement more, as if to where everything was everywhere. So yeah, I mean, that's been mainly my experiences. My first ones, I was probably going a little too crazy, and artists might come back and be like, yo, why is the snare over there? You know what I'm saying? Why are the hats over there? And I think also in that it's binaural settings versus where you're panning things.
Yeah.
Because early versions, there was some comb phasing, some things that you hear, and then kind of learning like, okay, if I have the kick in my binaural settings, I can't just like move that to the rear of the room. Otherwise I'm gonna get phased. I mean, it's gonna be weird anyway, but yes, kick wasn't the best thing to say, but like your hi-hats or something, you might be able to bring them off the front wall a little bit, move them a little bit. But like if you're throwing them in the back of the room, it might throw off the rhythm of the feel of the record a little bit for the listener. And so just kind of seeing not only what my preference is, but what is the artist's preference. Like I know in stereo because I've been doing it so long. So it's like I know what you're going to like, not like. But in Atmos, it was like, you might get an artist that's like, really into that. I want everything everywhere.
Everything to fly all the time.
And there's people, demoitis or whatever you want to call it. It's like, I don't know, that sounds a little weird because it doesn't sound like the stereo master that I liked, know? And so learning your clients, learning your genre, and how to satisfy everybody was also another kind of learning curve as well.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, I don't own an Atmos studio equipped room. I do everything in headphones. 90% of it is done in headphones. But don't get me wrong, I still QC at a studio. I have a couple studios I've been to, and I have my favorite studio to go to and QC and do my final check. But by the time I get there, it's more like I'm checking levels, making sure things don't pop out in front of me quickly or all of a sudden. But 90% of it is done in headphones for me. I've done stuff I've mixed in the car on the way, to Colorado. I mixed on a boat, you know what I mean?
On a boat?
On a boat,
okay.
Yeah. I happened to be on a boat at one time. And I was like, this shit is done.
Yeah.
Do tomorrow. I'm like, so And the point of reference for me, I use my regular Audio Technicas, and then I have my Apple Max headphones, the pink big ones, those for head tracking, and then I use the Beats AirFit, which go in your ear. And I listen to it at the gym. I listen to it anywhere. I feel comfortable enough to like do decisions, but the practice of me mixing in headphones and then going to a studio and QCing and even checking my mixes in different studios, I kind of get comfortable and remember and understand the difference between like the dimensions of like mid, near, far, or how far I'm pushing things in the room. But it honestly, it takes practice and it's very important for you to go to a studio and listen to your mixes and see how it translates from headphones into like a real environment that a Dolby ATMOS equipped room has.
So you're on a boat.
Hey, that's all I can say.
I'm still just, that's like an extra level. Like you were way more immersed than any of us were. You're feeling, yeah.
I was like, if I can do this on the boat, I can do this anywhere. Anybody can do this.
Step your game up.
Yeah, so I'm jealous right now. Like, I was just on a boat and I didn't even think to do that.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna do that. That's gonna be my next mix. I'm gonna rent a boat. Whoever wants to come, pull up. Yeah, for sure. Hot air balloon. That's good. I like that too. Yeah, we can do that. I think I've done one on a plane. Does that count?
Plane?
Yeah, does that count?
That's good. No, it counts.
Okay, cool.
The Mile High Mix Club.
Okay. I like that. I'm gonna get a shirt done for that.
Okay,
sure.
all right.
Wear it on every flight.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spread this Dolby Atmos thing any way I can.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Love that for you. As long as I get a little piece of the cut.
Yeah, for sure. I got you.
You talked a little bit about how you put your kick right down the center because otherwise it can feel a little bit weird. Do you feel like there's been more or less like a settling of conventions, especially for hip hop, the kind of the things that you guys do as far as where things are supposed to be, quote unquote? It's still quite a new format, so I'm not sure if the rules have really settled or if you feel like there's a compulsion to follow a certain amount of convention when you're doing those mixes.
For me, I mix a lot of hip hop and R&B, some pop. For me, I know for if the song has any drums, that's always gonna be in the front, And most of the time, I'll get the drums at the 2 track. So how much can I spread it in the room? The most I probably do is spread the drums, the high end to the sides, but over your head, maybe in the rear, but a tiny bit. And that just helps me create a bigger environment, especially when it comes to head tracking. When you move your head to the left and right, if you stick your drums here and then you move your head, the drums, there's gonna be this empty space. So I'm trying to also fill that space up and really fill your whole environment up with the entire mix. And if the drums are in the middle, I'm gonna throw some through the sides. If I might use some reverb or delay, so you can start feeling a little bit of that resonance in the back, that high resonance in the back from the drums. For the vocals too, vocals always in the middle. Maybe if there's something cool going on in the verse, or even sometimes in a stereo mix, they'll move it around. I'll follow that too. For what I really love doing is for my harmonies and maybe ad-libs is just bringing them on top of you and back. Yeah, like kind of spooky over your shoulder. I'm big on that. I'm pretty sure everybody does it. But I'm just like, every time I have like a bunch of harmonies, like especially when they're like tenor, soprano, or alto, anything like that, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to like level them and put them over you.
Idea. Yeah. Like a choir behind you.
Yes. And then most of the stuff, like especially for pop, they do a lot of synths, a lot of ear candy. So if I have anything of that, I'm moving that around the room. I'm using certain plugins that help me move that. Besides just the Dolby Panner, which is cool. Yeah. But I feel like the more you use and mix in Dolby, the more you want to like have more tools. So I use Sound Particles, which is a really dope. They have really dope plugins for immersive mixing.
Yeah. The CEO is here, by the way. Somewhere.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I saw him yesterday, but he's walking around. So
even when I don't have Atmos work and I'm mixing the stereo, I'm still using those same plugins because the way they move things around the space, it's so easy to use. So sound particles, it's called Energy. The other one's called Brightener. They're my favorite right now.
You're welcome, Sound Particle.
I know, like
Welcome.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's just kind of like almost an approach of stereo mixing in a sense where you're trying to do things that you're trying to do things without them being too noticeable. So to answer your question, I think in hip hop there is some sort of settling, like you said, where it's like the drums are always going to be here, this and that. So I will abide by that, but I'll also try to maybe get away with a little something. Like
You gotta push the envelope a little bit.
Like I'll have the kick and the bass probably right on the front wall.
Yeah.
But like if I have a snare, I might even bring it off just two.
Right.
You know, just little subtleties, vocals. You know, I want the vocals to feel like they're kind of in the center. But if you bring those to where the ear listening is, it doesn't sound good. So it's like I might bring them off the wall, 6, just to kind of make them feel like they sit behind the snare a little bit,
just a little bit,
tad bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's all like those little subtleties and learning what those little moves you can do. And then when you do 10 of those moves, the final product feels like it was a big move.
Right. Yeah.
Which is the same with stereo mixing. It's just, different ideas as far as how to get that there. And then also, with that genre, sometimes you don't get all your stems separated. So it's like,
You can't.
You get limited a little bit, and then you kind of are like, how do I fill this room if I only have 4 stems, And so you start getting a little creative. She actually put me on the sound particles for plugins for Dolby. I've always kind of been a panning guy, placing things, finding the 1 or 2 elements that maybe you can make dance around, little ear candy things. I'm big on ad-libs. I like them to be everywhere all the time, all at once. I like ad-libs to move, if you're lucky enough to get your PTFX or your reverbs, delays, whatever, separated in your stems, you get a little bit more leeway to fill more of that space with some of that ear candy without affecting the actual, meat of the mix.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's, you're towing the line. And we're going to keep kind of, kicking the line over there just a little bit. And hopefully, the early stereo stuff, it was like they had bass and kick on the right side and music on the left.
That's right. Because everything was hard, left, right, and center. Yeah.
So like if we did that in Atmos, the artist would be like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? But it's like, if we keep kicking that line, in a couple years, we probably get away with a little bit more and be able to present something even more immersive for people.
So would you say that those are some of your favorite techniques right now in Atmos, or are there other techniques that you just really enjoy doing as part of your own process?
I honestly don't. Sometimes, you talk about like you have a limit or a line. I try not to. I try to do it to the point where they're like, oh, I don't like that. You know what I mean? I try to really push the envelope and really break the rules. All that saturation, the things, even though it already has it.
Yeah.
Right now I've been using a lot of like little altar boy, little radiator, a lot of sound toys. Even though they don't have multi-channel for like Dolby ATMOS, you can still put it on certain channels and enhance certain features.
Okay.
On like certain size around you and stuff like that. Like, I know if I'm gonna double up the drums, I do this cool technique where like, in order to enhance my drums, especially if there's just a 2-track, I'll duplicate my drums and then saturate the second drum 2-track, the duplicate drums, the track.
I'm stealing that.
I'll saturate it.
Yeah.
It's almost like parallel compression.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot with like either drums, anything that I want it really to stick to. It's like energy, especially with drums, is so dense. They have to knock in hip hop. So I'm just like, how can I like spread it in the room? And I'm doing that. Now it's thinning out. And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? So I need to do something that's going to compress it. So in order for them to push. So I'll use like saturation, anything that's like grungy. I'll use imager. So maybe I'll push it back to mono, and the other one's kind of wide.
Yeah.
So it's just like literally pulling and tugging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple of techniques. I like what you just said though, because I think because of the space, people want to push things out wide.
Right.
And if you go too far, they basically play back mono. So like, if you go too far, they start, like you said, they start thinning out.
Thins out.
And you're not hearing what you thought you were going to hear.
Oh, yeah.
For me, early on, had no spatial plugins for reverbs, things like that. Some people that have, been in the course that I have taught, and when I supply my template, there's, if you don't have those reverbs, I built a whole bed of using Echo Boy along with a reverb on different speaker positions, and then you offset the delay time.
Yeah.
And so when the reverb hits, if it's quick enough, you won't notice that it's spinning around the room, and it just sounds like a big reverb.
Right. Yeah.
So that was, one technique I used early on in my mixes that I thought was cool. And then trying to figure out early on, like, they want the drums right here, but like I would like to fill a little bit more of this space.
Right.
So sometimes I'll use a send, and I'll send that to a different speaker position. So it's like the main focus is here, but I might I can get a little tiny, signal into side speakers, things like that. But now with the new renderer, and they have the Stereo Direct, there's, people I've talked to that'll switch back and forth, and they're doing basically their stereo and their Dolby around the same time. And I like the idea. It's new, so we'll see how it goes. But I like the idea because if you are doing the stereo mix and you're doing the spatial mix, and you're able to get the artist to come to the studio,
yes, it's they're
gonna be more susceptible to you making bigger changes,
right?
And being able, to go back and forth and stuff. So I think that's a great feature. I'm sure it's new, so I'm sure it'll take off a little bit more, and that's only gonna help expand that line,
Right, right.
So great job by Dolby on that, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Dolby. Dolby's been really great also for providing a lot of educational resources. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Dolby has like monthly seminars they do online. So if you are into Dolby and want to know the latest news, the latest updates, I know they're always updating the internal render. And if you want to be caught up with the news, they have like daily, monthly meetings. So
yeah, the seminars are great. Actually, in our newest course, we have like a toolbox that, we give a template, things like that. We've added in some of those links, some of those things for people to go explore and then see that, this is a reoccurring thing. Like I can stay up on new trends, new plugins, new anything. So yeah, Dolby has a lot of information, and also the Engineears course was built with Dolby.
Yes.
So our course is Dolby certified, and we worked hand in hand on the curriculum itself. So I think between that and Dolby, there's a whole bunch of resources for people to expand.
Yeah, so go check that out on the Dolby website and on Engineears, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My other question about moving stuff around, if you weren't tethered or limited by any sort of like label rules or what an artist, might like to hear, is there like a dream kind of thing that you'd want to try creatively in Dolby in Atmos that you haven't done yet? Because I know I have one.
For me, would be like to have the art. I've had this experience once where I actually had the artist in the room, and we were mixing the song from start to finish, which was super cool because we were both connecting. We were both teaching each other, and she had wrote this song maybe 4 years ago, so she was kind of over the song. She's like, all right, just want it out, but they were like, we're gonna mix it in Dolby, you're gonna be in the studio with her, and I've never had anybody in the studio with me. So when we were in studio mixing, she was just like so happy. Like she's like, I feel like I'm reproducing this song.
Yeah, because it feels like a brand new thing.
Exactly. And her song had so many like elements, guitars and pianos and even like violins, I think. So for her we were both like, I was engineering and she was just like, can we push things over there? Can we do this? Can we do that?
And we got her on board.
Exactly.
To push the envelope.
And her like vocab in Dolby Atmos was so pristine by the third day. So I was like, wow, like if I could have that experience again and have them in the studio and we can just knock out a whole album, that would be so cool. Like now we're able to like track in Dolby too, so we can record, we can mix, we can produce in Dolby. So we had the budget and like the studio for that, and just spend a whole week producing an album in Dolby, that would be so cool.
That would be like the bucket list.
Yeah.
For that. Yeah, that'd be amazing. What about you?
My dream would be to mix a Dolby Atmos song in VR,
Oh.
and then I can just put myself on a boat. No, so I think that would be cool. You know, I'm a visual person as well, so I think like if I was able to be in a VR thing and just be in any random setting, it's going to change how I mix that record.
Really?
And I think that would be a cool experience. I don't even know how this would be possible just off the top of my head, but I think it'd be the coolest thing if like how they do the NBA games where you go on VR and you could sit front row.
Really?
Like what if you were at a Beyonce concert front row, but they could have like a live Dolby mix that they send to the feed?
That would be amazing.
So you would just hear the Dolby mix, but you would also feel like you're in the stadium watching your favorite artist.
For sure.
And I think that would be huge if somehow some really smart person could figure out how to do that.
I think somebody has, because one of my favorite Dolby mixes I ever heard was a Bruce Springsteen song where, if you are familiar with Bruce Springsteen's music, it's very like working class America, like union blue collar jobs, kind of like good old boys, kind of rock and roll vibes. So what the Dolby Atmos mix actually made it sound like was that Bruce Springsteen and his band were playing at one end of a sports bar, and you were sitting at the bar at the other end of the bar eating your peanuts.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah.
What song? Was it Born in the USA?
I don't think so. I have to go ask. I don't think so. My friend Paul Novotny showed me that mix, and I was like, wow, that opens up to me. That's like a whole other field of production choices and creative choices about where you can give the listener a job to do with Dolby Atmos, and that you can, like, what is your role in this picture or in this scene that you're setting?
Yeah, like you invite them to be a part of.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. One of the coolest things I had heard when I first got certified and I was listening to other people's mixes was it was like a live performance, not like live in front of me, but like a recorded live performance that they did Dolby on, and it would be like the open hi-hats. You know, on a drum set, they go up and down. And so who mixed the song in Dolby had them going up and down.
That's crazy.
And open, and it starts to feel like they're performing in front of you.
Yeah.
You know, you're not like immersed necessarily. You're like watching a live performance happen in front of you.
Yeah.
That was super
cool. So I was at like this dude Paul's house. He's got like and he was showing me his favorite mixes, a lot of which were more classical mixes where he's like, it's like you're sitting in Carnegie Hall in the front row and things are moving past you. And I said to Paul, this is all wonderful, but most of us don't listen to music sitting down in the middle of a theater like this, right? Like
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but what made me think about that was a lot of the music, especially popular music, is very functional. We're listening to it because we're doing something at the same time. It makes us move, especially like a lot of hip hop and dance music, where it's like it's there because we also want to turn up and party, right? And so at his house, what I did was I turned on Megan Thee Stallion for him. And,
Nice. I like that. I like that choice.
And I said to Paul, how would you approach Megan Thee Stallion? Because I can text Les Brathwaite, the stereo mixer, your opinions about that. And I said to him, so to me, this is like a great opportunity for a functional Atmos mix where you can make it sound like you're in the club with Megan, right? Because that's what we want to do. We want to feel like we're part of her gang, right? So, that was like, I had all these ideas of things you could be doing in terms of like having different Atmos mixes for a different job for your listener. So like I was like, when we were listening to the Spice Girls, I was like a big Spice Girls kid. And I was like, the reason why the Spice Girls were so popular is not because we're like sitting in Carnegie being like, oh, Spice Girls. It was because a lot of us wanted to be the Spice Girls. Yeah. And so like my dream Atmos mix is actually where I put the lead vocals to the sides of me, both sides, so that I can be a Spice Girl on stage. And I put the crowd in front of me so that,
like that.
Yeah.
What would be your Spice Girl name?
Oh, I don't know. Bossy Spice?
Okay. I like that. All right. That's why you were trying to be dead center in the middle.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. And so it just like really opened my eyes to a whole bunch of really cool possibilities, and also like some really funny things that people do in Atmos. Like I heard this one Atmos mix of Le Freak by Chic, like the disco song.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I've noticed was like the lead singers are like right in the middle, but the drums like are over here, and like the guitar is much closer to me on my left. And I was sitting there going, why am I facing the back of the stage with Nile Rodgers on my left and the drums on my right? And clearly somebody didn't think about this. I was like, why are you listening to Le Freak by Chic? It's because you're probably in a disco or like, trying to have a good time. And so what I would have done, I said to him that what I would have done was I would have made that move. So you're kind of, and rhythmically move. So you're kind of in like a Soul Train dance. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. That's a cool idea. That's what, so like, yeah, like VR concerts and stuff, like how you're saying I want to, move with stuff, like that's why I think that would be huge, is like you could be dancing in a club in your VR and with head tracking and stuff. Like if I turn and see somebody over here, like the drum's gonna be over here, you know what I'm saying? So I think that is a cool idea. I really like that idea.
Yeah. And if you're like two-stepping at a bar and you like very slowly rotate around the room for country music, then go all the way around the room really slowly like a carousel.
Yeah, you gotta go check out, see who's on the dance floor, and then go back to the bar. So definitely I feel that.
All right. My last question, then we'll get to some audience questions here. How much has Dolby Atmos kind of contributed to your overall workload? What proportion has it started impacting your career? And like, are you doing mostly that kind of work now, or is it half and half? Like, what's that looking like for you? How much is it picking up?
For me, I've been an audio engineer for 10 years. I've been recording and mixing. I still record and mix and do Dolby. I know I talk about Dolby a lot, but honestly, I still do recording sessions. I still do mixing, but I feel like Dolby got me inspired again. So, I kind of want to move into the film world and start mixing for film, doing music in Atmos for film, and I've already started following my favorite film mixers in Dolby, and I'm really looking into that career of transitioning into film. Even though music is my first passion, but I feel like I need to keep learning, so that's why I kind of want to get into film. But other than that, working in Dolby has also opened up other doors to work with other artists. Usually when I mix in Dolby, they look at my page, the artist, finds more about me, and they're like, oh, you also record, you also do stereo mixing. And I'm just like, yep. And then they're like, the next album I do, I want you to record for me,
Absolutely.
So I've gotten a few clients because of Dolby mixing. And
it's another tool in your arsenal.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go for it. No?
I was going to just piggyback onto that, is like, nowadays, because like when it was first new, there was a lot of back catalog stuff. Right. So you would, I feel like I would get a lot more work that I didn't work on the stereo mix. Now, if I'm doing the stereo mix, at some point the A&R manager, whoever it is, artist, they're going to ask, do you also do Dolby? Because they want that version. And so there's been times where I'm sure they were between me and somebody else to mix something in stereo, and then I was able to do Dolby, and so I got that job. But I will say early on, like when we first graduated, there was a lot of back catalog stuff, and so for me, I'm looking back like 5 years ago, I hear this album and I'm like, man, it's my dream to work on that album. It's so cool. 5 years later, I get certified for Dolby, and then they hit me up to do the Atmos on the back catalog, and now I worked on that record. And probably manifested that at some point earlier somehow, but I always thought that was like really cool to be able to work on some of the records that like they're already out, so you're like, there's no chance of me ever working on that record.
Exactly.
I wish I did, but then boom, I got to check that off my bucket list.
I know. I love when that happens.
Yeah, I was fanning out. I was fanning out on a lot of the first stuff that I did.
All right. Let's go to the audience. If you've got any questions. Yes.
We got a mic right here.
We got a mic. Courtney, earning your paycheck today.
Hold down the red button. I got you.
I just wanted to ask about like go-to effects. What's your favorite effects to use when you're starting to use the panner? Even when you first started or right now, what's your favorite effects to use for clients?
Sound particles. No.
Sound particles. You should really look them up. They're really affordable though. They sell you both plugins in a pack. Very easy to use. I use it in stereo. I use it in Atmos. But usually I'll just shuffle through them because it has a lot of like presets. So I'll shuffle through them, see what they do. But my favorite, it depends on the instrument, honestly. Like I can swirl it around, it goes high, it goes low, it can swoop next to you. It honestly depends on the instrument. And usually when I listen to a song, I first listen to it in stereo, and I'll go to the gym, I'll listen to it in stereo, and I'm already imagining what things can I move in the mix. And I'm also hoping that a lot of these instruments or stems are broken up and they're not in 2 tracks. So I'm like, ooh.
Fingers crossed. What do you do when you get a 2-track?
When I get a 2-track, oh man.
We need a whole nother panel on that.
Yeah.
Group therapy session.
Yeah, it's a lot of tricks when it's like 2 tracks. It's mostly like how can I spread it in the room?
Right.
And I've gone through like little softwares where I split the stems. Sometimes it works, but I would say at least 20% of the time it works. A lot of these like splitters, they give artifacts, so that's fucked up. You can mess up the mix, the stereo mix. So to me, when I get a 2-track, I'm like, how can I make this 2-track spread in the room? So I start using like parallel techniques, EQing techniques, mid-side techniques.
Yeah. That's what I would attempt to do is
Mid-side helps
parallel. Yeah.
in parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah, mid-side parallel. I've split the 2-track into EQ it into 3 bands.
Yeah,
try to
That's
widen.
what I do.
Yeah, same stuff. Maybe a little more automation moments.
Yeah, that's true. You'd have more to play with there. That's not so overwhelming if it's
Right. I mean, especially if you get a track that there's a point where the music drops and it's just vocal.
Yeah.
Like you can get a little more creative there,
Exactly,
and then
yeah.
sometimes that works because it makes that moment in the record really pop out.
Yep.
And you're accentuating that because in the stereo mix it's already doing that.
Very nice.
So yeah, just little subtle tricks. I think the stem separation stuff, the artifacts is a huge thing.
Yeah.
They've also cracked down a lot QC wise on like they can recognize
Really?
when you've stem separated.
Oh.
And so you might
So you have to be
you might
careful
get
with that.
you might
Wow.
so yeah, there's a few techniques, but you're limited.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
But-
yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Try out sound particles though again, because they help a lot with 2-track stems. Like that energy panner is like every time in the 2-track, if there's a point where the music gets intense or the loop gets intense, the energy panner pushes it out, based on compression and threshold. So it has helped me a lot when it comes to working with 2 tracks.
You got any plugins that you love?
I'm not really super big on playing with a bunch of effects unless like, I didn't get, for some reason, I didn't get a PTFX stem or an FX stem or something like that. The reverb technique I talked about earlier, I really like just because I can automate the spacing between the verb. So you can have it to where the verb is constantly feeling like it's filling the room, and then if I start expanding how the distance between each position, it feels like it slows down and spins. So you can kind of like
That's crazy.
Yeah,
It's like curling, but with reverb.
yes, but it's cool though because like if you get a record that's high energy and then there's like a bridge or something that breaks down and it's like real ethereal.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, maybe I'll slow the verb down and it feels like a different experience for that moment and then it comes back.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of like that and like the open hi-hat thing I was talking about, trying to think about how to manipulate the sound so that it feels like there was a big effect on it, but not necessarily using crazy plugins.
Yeah.
But I would also like to plug sound particles so I could be
Yeah.
part of this.
Cute. Dude.
Shout outs to
Dude.
I'm going over there after this.
Any other questions? We'll wrap it up after that.
So we're taking the current cohort right now for Dolby. So we're really just diving into it for the first time. When you guys started doing that, coming from stereo mixes, were there any sort of like huge things you did on the very first couple mixes where you're like, wow, that's way too much of a phase problem or like too big of an issue?
Rookie mistakes. What did we do?
Like number one thing you were like, damn, I cannot do that again.
Uh, for me, it was definitely the low end. Um, I was mixing the headphones a lot, so I was just like, I'm not hearing the low end. I'm like, and I kept pushing the LFE, pushing the LFE, and then I got to the studio. I use the studio in Burbank called Just for the Record, and they have a really dope room. So I swear I played my mix back, and then all I hear is a bunch of rumble, and I was like, oh, that was intense. So then from that day forward, I kind of scaled and sit and noticed like how much is a lot. You know what I mean? And whatever I'm doing, let me not do that.
It's like learning your speakers all over again.
Yes.
It's just a different context for that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar experience with the LFE because, you know, especially being in the hip hop genre, you're like, dude, I'm trying to make this thing slap, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, so I'm pushing the LFE and I experienced the same thing. And that's where like the starting points that I was talking about in headphones came into place was like, I found, you know, I like to start at maybe negative 38 on the LFE. And then that's like where I know I can maybe push a little, maybe pull back a little, but I like to be in that range.
Right.
For me, but the first thing when I was first taking the course, because I started trying to like do the mixes before I had like the in-person and like really got to experience it. It was binaural settings versus your panning. So like at first I'm like, you have an idea real quick. You're like, oh, let me try to throw this snare like in the mid, but not realizing that I had that channel in near on the binaural settings, and so you start to hear the phase. And I used to be like, maybe that's just Dolby, or maybe that's just my headphones.
Right.
Trying to translate.
Yeah.
And then you go hear it in a room, and you're like, no, it's definitely me. I did something wrong. And so then I went back and figured it out. And so I think that's why templates are a good thing in Dolby, especially because you can have your binaural settings already related to a certain pan position. And once you move things there, you can kind of adjust them from there, but it kind of is like a fail-safe. Like I'm not going to have comb filtering throughout this mix. And yes, that's probably be my answer.
All right. I think that's it for time. So, one more?
One more.
Okay.
We got
Yes. Last one.
Thank you both for being here. I'm a big fan of both of you. I was just curious, do you think we'll ever get to a point where we'll produce or maybe even track in Atmos, and then the stereo mix will actually be the secondary?
We're there.
We're there.
We're there.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be
Oh, I
amazing.
think producing a record would be so much fun.
Oh my God.
Atmos. But yeah, with the stereo direct, and this is my guy Darsh over here, but with the stereo direct, I think that allows that as well. Is like you can go crazy with your Dolby mix, go back to stereo direct, and kind of see, balance them out so that when the artist, because that's the whole thing is like, then the artist can hear both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's no demoitis of the stereo. It's like, oh yeah, this works. And I think that's what's going to allow us to expand a little more spatially in what we do with the mixes.
Love that. Okay, sounds like...
Sorry,
Oh.
do you think that'll be the primary way to work from now? Because you mentioned mono going to stereo back in the 50s, 60s, and then nobody's really mixing in mono, or maybe starting in mono, but then eventually...
I mix in mono.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Stereo.
Yeah, I do all of my leveling in mono first.
Do you think that would happen with stereo, where it kind of just gets... Dolby Atmos will just be king and everybody listen to Atmos and stereo will die down? Or do you think stereo will always be at the forefront?
I feel like we are listening to stereo still because of the type of headphones we have, what we have at home, it's basically the technology we have access to, what we can afford.
Yeah.
Over time, Dolby already has develop and network with a lot of companies that cars are coming out, speaker systems are coming out. I know China is a very forward and super advanced in Dolby Atmos, so they have Dolby Vision in their cars, they have Dolby Atmos audio in their cars. So I feel like by the time probably I have a kid and my kid is like 15, I have a feeling that they're going to be listening to music in Dolby Atmos, and stereo for them would be secondary.
Yeah.
At least that's what I hope. But you can see the just gradual growth of technology with AI and cars and home systems and VR, all of this.
Yeah.
So it's going to transition pretty smoothly.
Yeah, I think it's when our lifestyles change, right? Like we were listening to mono back then and you weren't driving around in your car listening to your favorite albums, right? So like stereo became king there because people started being able to listen to their music in different environments. And, you know, we got Neuralink and stuff coming up. We might all be living in VR soon and we're all listening to Dolby. And I think that's the thing. But I think currently, like we're talking recent future, once we can get the Dolby Atmos mixes to be able to go on DSPs and stuff as loud as stereo, that'll change a lot. Like right now, if you've never heard Dolby and I'm like, here's your stereo master, and then you play your Dolby and it's 10 dB quieter, you're going to be like, why did I do this? So I think that's a big thing. If we can get those to level out, I think that's going to be the first bridge. And then, yeah, if we're, you know, we might have Dolby Atmos Neuralinks in here. You know what I'm saying? You might mix with your thoughts in 10 years. We don't
encourage Elon. We don't need that. And I would say like it's a scaling of technology. I think we have it. It's about, can we get it to a package that is broadly manufacturable and distributable on a consumer level, and then it's game over, and then everything that'll be the default, and stereo will be there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Let's give it up one more time for Sircut and for Jenny Ortiz. Thank you for joining us at NAMM at the Engineears booth. I hope you guys have a great rest of the NAMM show, rest of your conference. Stick around for some more fun stuff that's coming up here. And I will turn it back over to my friends.
Oh, also, if anybody has any donations,
yes, that's right.
With all the wildfires and stuff going on. So if you do have anything, please donate. We have our donation room over here as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Have a great one, guys.